Between Light and Shadows by Joey Yu. Read by Pommel Knight. Kennen had not slowed since setting off from the great temple of Koshin. The colors of the land formed a swirling palette as he flitted over the hills and cliffs, plains and plateaus. The yodel was like a speeding dot amid broad strokes painted on canvas. As the Kinko's heart of the tempest, he had delivered the judgment of the Order's leadership thousands of times before. But this time it's different, Kennen thought. This time it's about the lives of my Kinku brothers and sisters. An urgent request had come from a branch of acolytes to the south. Their temple had been corrupted by an unknown evil spirit. They could find no way to repel it, and so they sought aid from the Kinku Triumvirate. With Akali's former role as Fist of Shadow currently unfilled, this triumvirate consisted of just two leaders, Shen, the Eye of Twilight, and Kennen. They had made a decision, and now Kennen raced to distant Raishai on the southern coast of Jin. When Noxus invaded Ionia many seasons ago, the Triumvirate ruled that Kinko would not be involved in the war. The Raishai acolytes had been among the Order's most faithful, supporting the edict without question. And for that, I must save them. Kennen followed a churning river and dashed across ample golden grassland. Bolting for the misty forests of the southern Shenzhen mountains, he was like lightning zipping through clouds. He passed a series of ruins, including the village of Zhuanyan. It wasn't until he reached the harbour town of Evany that Kennen came to a halt under the morning sun. Jian's shore was across the strait, beyond shimmering blue waters. Kennen boarded the first ferry just before it set sail. Its mast was a living tree grown out of the hull, branches arcing backwards, massive leaves catching the sea breeze like membranes on the wings of a Southern Isles wyvern. There was a loose crowd on the ferry, with Kennen the only yodel. The humans tipped their heads to him. Yodels were treated with respect among Ionians, even when the spirit creatures appeared in their true form, as Kennen did now, as he always did, for he had achieved a state of balance through his Kinku training, especially through the teachings of the great master, Tagachiru, the first Fist of the Shadow. When Kennen joined the Kinku centuries ago, Tagachiru had inquired what the yodel admired most about humans. Your stories. You have so many. Kennen's eyes were wide. Your lives are short, but your stories preserve what you hold most dear. That's why you are better suited for safeguarding the realms than any other undying. Under that clear sky and the blazing sun, Kennen had shared his thoughts on what role he could play for the Kinku. The great master listened and considered his words. Someday, all of you will die, Kennen added cheerfully. I'd like to bear your stories. The story of the Kinku. The great master, Tagachiru, had smiled then. That is a noble idea, and not a small responsibility. I can begin now, by delivering our verdict to the people. Very well, said the great master. Your role shall be causing the sun to shine the light of our judgment and be the force that mediates between that light and its shadows. Kennen stirred from his reverie as the dock came into view, and the chalky white cliffs crowned by an emerald expanse of trees. He waved a clawed hand at the passengers behind him, and they wished him fair winds and swift travel. He jumped off the ferry even before it slowed to dock, skipping over water and onto land. A storm was beginning to brew. Kennen's kinku robes and mask were soaking wet as he charged through the pouring rain, and he went on without food or rest. I hope I'm not too late. Dark clouds whirled low, pierced by lightning as the Yodel leader arrived. Kennen noted 20 acolytes sitting in front of the Raishai temple. The building appeared unremarkable, solid and intact. Master Kennen, you're here! The head of the acolytes, Haida, stood in deference, but his limbs quaked, his knees buckling under him. You need to help us fight the baleful spirit that plagues our temple. The rest of the acolytes slowly rose, their eyes glassy. Kennen was hoping that he and Shen had been wrong, but now their worst fear was confirmed. He felt a pang of sadness. They had been so loyal. There is nothing to be fought, Kennen told Haida, his voice soft with grief. The temple isn't corrupted. It is you, all of you. A riot of noise broke out. Several acolytes tilted their heads, glaring. Corrupted? Haida's eyes bore into Kennen. We have always obeyed. Long ago, when you told us not to fight the Noxian invaders, we stood by while our people were slaughtered. His face contorted unnaturally, as if it had melted. And then, when our fellow Ionians in Tula, Kashuri, and Huori called for aid, you bade us not to heed them, and again we obeyed. We forsake the opportunity to bring justice to Noxus. You're filled with anguish, Kennen said, and malevolent entities of the spirit realm are feeding on it. They're feeding on you. Kennen could see what the humans could not. Dark smoke emanated from them, like tentacles bursting from their bodies. They were surrounded by inky tendrils that sought to devour, creatures clawing out of the spirit realm with greater force as their prey grew more agitated. Eventually, they would consume these kinku and wreak havoc in Raishai. The world is changing, he said. Zhen has descended into turmoil, and you're torn between what the kinku demands of you and what your hearts desire. He paused, then said what he came to say. I'm releasing you from the Order. You're banishing us? Said an acolyte in the back row. You can't preserve the balance between realms in this state. Kennen looked at the acolyte in return. I need to get through to them. Leave the kinku now. This is the only way you can heal. Do what you will, so your dark emotions won't destroy you. You want to rid of us now that we're no longer useful to you? This is dishonor! Haida flashed his blade. The acolytes howled in unison, unaware that shadowy talons were grasping at them with vicarious intent. Kennen could feel their pain, the kind born out of the rift between two worlds of belief, the kind Akali felt before she left. Yet he let lightning crackle between his hands. Don't think to test me. Snarling, Haida and several acolytes charged forward.
Balance in all things.
The small Yordle waltzed between the clumsy humans, easily evading all attacks. He clicked his clawed fingers, and arcs of electricity ripped out, dropping his attackers in one ferocious burst. They moaned as they twitched on the muddy ground. The rest stopped, uncertain about what to do. Grief, guilt, shame. The acolytes' faces were masks of agony. The rain washing over their ichors oozing from their eyes. Kennen flipped away out of the range and sighed. Then he remembered something he had learned from humans. Sometimes To tell a story is to lie. Let your story be mine to tell. He pulled down his mask. Go now, in peace. The sinister influence will remain in Jeune, but the Kinko will hear you fought hard against it before you left the Order, with honor. To fabricate truth, to preserve what you hold most dear. The acolyte's eyes cleared for a moment, and the dark vapor began to dissipate. No one spoke, but some nodded their understanding to the yodel. Eventually, those who could gathered their wounded. It was always tough to watch old comrades go, but Kennen knew it was for the best. They had devoted themselves to the Kinko, and now they were free to find a new purpose. Their mental state could regain balance, and the malevolent entities would have nothing to feed on. The yodel watched as the former acolyte stumbled away into the gloom. The rain did not abate. The drenched humans looked small and vulnerable. Someday, all of you will die, Kennen thought, sorrow gripping his heart. But I will bear your story.